Hi, and welcome to Truth Matters. My name is Lynn, and with this podcast, I'm hoping to shine a light on a range of topics, whether Irish, regional, or global, and whether environmental, cultural, or political. Because the truth matters.
In this third episode of Truth Matters, Lies, Damn Lies and Troll Farms, I'm diving into the murky world of social media platforms. I'll call them SMs. I'll unpick the meanings of misinformation and disinformation, data mining and all the other terminology. Explain troll farms and their lookalikes and where they are, why they exist, and how this affects news gathering. And full disclosure, I love my phone and everything I can do with it and the world that it unfolds, but I'm always wary about handing out information about myself. If I said to you I was a beautiful 30-year-old with long blonde hair, those who know me would laugh at the very idea of it. Others may try to work out whether my voice and way of speaking sounds like that of a 30-year-old and make their own judgment. And then others would just take it as fact that I am who I say I am. And this is the world we live in. It's often difficult to judge what is true and what is not. So let's have a look at these SMs. Billions of people are using SM sites every day, the absolute majority accessing them via mobile devices and engaging on average 2 hours, 20 minutes per day, longer for younger people. And 90% of consumers are said to rely on SMs to keep up with trends and cultural moments. And 60% of ex-users rely on it for news. And that's regardless of the veracity of what is being viewed or listened to. Engagement is the key metric for all SM platforms, although the measurements of this tends to change depending on which index you're looking at, but the figures are all in the similar ballpark. The active monthly user statistics show the battle for users is between titans Meta and Alphabet with their Facebook and YouTube platforms, both with near or in excess of 3 billion users. Meta's Instagram is running third with around 2 billion users. TikTok and WhatsApp are charging up the charts with about 1 billion users each and increasing their usership at the fastest rate, with Reddit chasing. X is well under 1 billion, and then there are many successful SM platforms not so well known in this part of the English-speaking world, like WeChat, Weibo, Viber, Telegram, Douyin, all within excess of 500 million users. Although some believe that SM fatigue is becoming a thing. Short-term video content is rising as the most popular method of engagement, reflecting that our attention span is getting shorter. But TikTok's expansion may be hampered by the impending ban or sale in the US, although it's already banned in India, Iran, and even China, where Douyin is used instead of TikTok, despite both being owned by the same company, ByteDance. YouTube is blocked in China, Russia, Iran, and some of the stands, as are other platforms. So what is the problem with SMs? With the shift of news starting in 1980, initially with CNN, from a few times a day to a 24/7 sound surround news cycle, it meant that hyperbole became the norm for many news outlets. Exaggeration, headlining, scoops, exclusives, inside tracks, a need to have something to say all day, every day, even if it wasn't relevant, and now not even true. This news onslaught morphed into the world of SMs. SM advertising equals about 30% of the total global advertising spend and is expected to reach $277 billion this year, mainly via mobiles. And over 90% of marketers aim to spend more money on social marketing going forward, with SM sites offering analysis of not only their marketing activities, but that of their competitors as well. And each SM is looking for a greater share of the pie, and it appears that engagement is much more important than veracity of content. The popular Rest is Politics podcast conducted an exercise where the three presenters tweeted something similar at the same time with trigger words and received collectively nearly 2 million views. Oh, I wish. 22,000 retweets and over 10,000 comments. This was analysed by the Valiant firm, who found that 15 to 20% of the comments were from bots and 40 to 50% from trolls. The bots find something that may be either appealing or provoking and forward it to people who might find it most objectionable, regardless of whether it's true. Outrage is now a default setting for many people. People talk of a tsunami of misinformation, wrong or false information, which is regularly referred to as fake news, a term which may be used to promote either the truth or the lack of it. Let's take a look at some of the terminology being used. Misinformation is fake news created by mistake. Someone saw or heard something, jumped to the wrong conclusion, either inadvertently or deliberately, and announced it to the world. Disinformation, though, has the intention to deceive. It is fake news created and shared deliberately by someone or an entity, knowing it to be false, with the goal to mislead public opinion, often used as clickbait. Autobots, or bots, are AI programs using algorithms to send out messages automatically in response to a trigger word or expression. Their posts are easier to identify, but the sheer number is overwhelming as they flood the zone with whatever the message of the day is. Trolling is provoking and or initiating online arguments, and it is on a massive scale. These can be individual trolls or troll farms, which are generally professional organizations created by governments or private entities. Deception is their main objective. Their goal is to influence or manipulate public opinion or harm individuals, societies, or institutions, and can be funded by state actors or celebrities, political figures, billionaires, and toxic industries. Employees and or Autobots generate fake identities and endeavor to create an impression of authenticity by linking with each other to form what looks like a network in SM's websites and blogs. In 2018, Twitter deleted 2 million fake accounts, and that was at a time when there was oversight. They and the other SMs are not bothering these days. NATO has identified troll farms worldwide, with one of the biggest being discovered in St. Petersburg in 2015 with 300 employees. Not only was their duty to praise Putin and criticize countries not supporting Russia, but to also create campaigns for ongoing interference in elections in targeted countries, including the 2016 US election, according to the Mueller report. Not only do these troll farms respond to other people's mentions, but they provoke contentious discussion, creating the fiction of real world disputes. And they often use inconspicuous names like the benign sounding Internet Research Agency, a Trojan horse of the Russians. But troll farms are not just located in Russia. According to Oxford University research, China has 2 million people engaged in media and information campaigns, undertaking messaging enhancements. And China has its own so called 50 Cent Army, who suppress criticism of the Chinese government and spread pro Chinese narratives. In 2020, the PolitiFacts website noted 186 troll farms in Macedonia, 96 in Myanmar, 82 in Ghana, 45 in Georgia, and so the list goes on. And the 2024 European EEA report on foreign information manipulation and interference threats, called FIMI, uncovered over 500 coordinated campaigns targeting 90 countries and 322 organizations, including the EU, NATO, Western Armed Forces, and independent media. 88% of these FIMI cases were detected on X. Ukraine is the favorite country or campaign target, followed by France and then Germany. Election time is when the FIMI flows relentlessly, and election interference is considered the most persistent threat. Often, for a relatively small amount of money, a smear campaign can be created by any one of these troll farms, whilst conspiracy theories can be developed or enriched, and for a more substantial sum of money, they will interfere in global elections and institutions. The FIMI report considers Russia the main actor, not surprising considering Putin's KGB background, with China second, and their networks often mutually amplify content. And all these troll farms adapt quickly, shape-shifting content to suit the news of the day. So what other deceptions are being enacted? So-called volunteers exist who pick up the trolled news and disseminate it further because it fits in with their own ideology, plus the feeling of being on the inside track and the first with the news. Grifters are trolls with the extra of a money-making scam. 5 to 15% of accounts have a tip jar so they can become even more successful as trolls. Phishing and hacking. Troll farms focus on obtaining sensitive information through phishing or hacking accounts to gain compromising material. The Russians are particularly good at this, but the Chinese are catching up. Astroturfing is creating the impression that a particular opinion has widespread support. Autobots create tsunamis of false messaging, and troll farms can be paid to target a particular event. Influencers are a very fast-growing group of SM participants who have enormous followings and thus enormous influence, but are not always benevolent. The market for their goods is expected to be worth $32 billion in 2025. And then there's keyboard warriors, those who are happy to attack from their keyboards whilst hiding behind their screens. And you may even know a few of those. But what are the SM companies looking for? Data is the most precious commodity. Data harvesting. That sounds quite harmless, doesn't it? But data mining, as it is often referred to, can be as dirty as any other mining activity. Data is now a most sought after global commodity, and the misuse of data is rampant. With billions of pieces of information that can readily be identified to a phone or computer, data is worth a fortune. IBM and Oracle are the leading companies for the supply of this meaningful information from unstructured data, with numerous software companies touting their version for companies to build data mines. Data mining per se is not illegal. We frequently give SMs access to our data, although Europe is more assiduous in allowing us the opportunity to reject this. Companies from SMEs to huge corporations and institutions regularly target their markets according to the data being made available to them. Data miner operations often involve machine learning, AI, and predictive analysis to identify patterns, extract information, thus being able to make predictions. However, unauthorized access to data or the use of biased algorithms can be considered questionable, ranging from unethical to illegal. And do you remember Cambridge Analytica, the British consulting firm that extrapolated a paid psychological profile of 270,000 users, resulting in a bonanza accessing all their connections and networks, harvesting up to 87 million Facebook profiles? Cambridge Analytica's activities were supporting certain candidates during the 2016 US presidential campaigns. And on St. Patrick's Day 2018, there was the great revelation of its activities by the Guardian and New York Times journalists, courtesy of a former employee whistleblower. Facebook was eventually fined $5 billion by Congress due to privacy violations for its role in the data harvesting. Cambridge Analytica eventually was wound down and went into bankruptcy. Let me rephrase that. Cambridge Analytica and its umbrella group of SCL plus SCL Elections was eventually reacquired by its holding company, complete with all its data, under the names of Emma Data Limited and Auspex International, both entities subsequently headed up by many of the former Cambridge Analytica executives and some participants in right-leaning think tanks. They're probably doing swimmingly now. And two of the directors of the original Cambridge Analytica were AI kingpin, Republican big-time donor and billionaire Robert Mercer and Steve Bannon. Yes, that's Steve Bannon, he of Breitbart fame. It was all a bit incestuous. When it comes to online safety, the Digital Services Act legislation aimed at protecting EU citizens from online harm is slowly grinding its way through the European Commission. Similarly, the UK Online Safety Act is set to protect young people from harmful content. Brazil even fined X $5 million before X eventually took down offending online misinformation accounts. The fine was nothing to X, but the global news coverage, well, that was a bit of a leveler. There is also a digital services tax on the table for European countries, but the UK wants to be the digital hub for Europe and may be conflicted. Ireland, too, is somewhat at the mercy of the tech bros who dominate in much of the employment of the country. It has been a tricky high wire act for some time now. So, how does this affect news gathering? The diligent response to this swirling SM disinformation scenario is to consider the source of all information shared. Is it from a trustworthy, independent source? Think the Irish Times, the Guardian, the BBC, New York Times, The Conversation as some examples when looking for news from reliable sources, ones with distinguished reputations, not owned by billionaires. But is all this affecting the freedom of the press? World Press Freedom Day was last week. But news is becoming devalued, with many of the populist media outlets boosting sales with clickbait headlines, scurrilous attacks on people, a 4-sentence paragraph summing up the news, frequent use of violent and goading headlines about rape, murder, traitors, etc., and very little actual news content. The sports pages are generally the most newsworthy section. But the undermining of the quality of journalism from the red tops is not the main problem real journalists face. So many journalists are now at risk whilst working to get the actual news out. Their role is to inform the public and hold power to account. And many risk their lives to get the stories told in the ever decreasing number of independent media outlets around the world, and getting fewer if various leaders have their way. The free press has been dismantled in countries like Afghanistan, and journalists investigating human rights violations, corruption, and violence in places like Mexico, Palestine, Iran, Sudan, Pakistan, Myanmar, and many others suffer harassment, intimidation, threats to themselves and family. They get attacked, their gear stolen, many are arrested, even tortured, and sometimes killed. Remember Daphne Galizia, the Maltese anti-corruption activist, journalist and blogger, who was killed by a car bomb in October 2017? Or what about the case of flight FR4978? Yes, that Ryanair flight in May 2021 that was forcefully diverted to Belarus after a military jet was sent up to accompany it with a ruse about a non-existent bomb threat. The Belarusian opposition blogger and journalist Roman Protasevich was a passenger on board and arrested on landing and has not been heard of since. It used to be that wearing a blue press vest in a war zone was seen as protection. Now it is more like a target. Journalism has become one of the most dangerous jobs. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, 124 journalists were killed in 2024, the highest number ever. And nearly 2/3 of them were Palestinians killed in Gaza and the West Bank. Protecting media freedom must be seen as a democratic priority, as controlling the narrative is considered the key to holding power for the autocrats. The US administration is currently initiating lawsuits against some major news organizations, ordering federal investigations against others, and defunding some public broadcasting outlets. Journalists were even referred to as the enemies of the people at US presidential election rallies, echoing the reference made previously about the judges plastered over the front pages of the British tabloids during the Brexit debate. And some journalists are either giving up or self-censoring against covering specific issues as the pressures are too great, battling against constant online disinformation. So, how is press freedom doing? According to Reporters Sans Frontières, 2025 World Press Freedom Index, yes, there appears to be an index for many things if you look. Of the 180 listed countries, those with good press freedom score between 85 to 100 points. Heading down the list with 42 listed as satisfactory, 47 each for problematic and difficult, and lastly, the remaining 37 considered very serious at less than 40 points. Criteria includes autonomy of media and a political context, legal framework, economic context, social cultural context, and safety. The index's bottom 10 contains the usual suspects, from Russia at 171st with just over 24 points, and down it goes through Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, China, North Korea, with Eritrea at the very bottom with 11.32 points. But all of them have been dropping scores substantially from the previous year. The UK is 20th with a satisfactory score of nearly 79. In the middle categories at 57th is the US with a problematic and a score of just over 65. Hungary has a problematic score of nearly 63, but is still just above Bulgaria, another EU country which has slipped 5 points since the previous year. The top 10 is actually a top 7, as only 7 countries made the good category for press freedom, and all were from Europe, as were all the top 15 countries. Once again, Norway tops the poll at 92.31 points, accompanied by the 3 other Nordic states, plus Estonia, Netherlands, and yes, we made it, Ireland at number 7 with a score of almost 87. But let's not get too complacent, as we were second in 2023 with almost 90 points. To maintain our freedom, we need to maintain our free press. So just look out for those trolls. This is Lynn, signing off until the next time, and thank you for listening.